That's okay.
I'm going to look back here. This is
I think we may need
Real close. I've seen her a lot. She was special. Her song selection, everything was just like.
good.
Crazy. With her daughter singing and stuff. It was crazy.
I just did with a crowd, you know.
All right. Well, we are Paul. Are we? That's, oh, right here.
That's your window to the world.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate your attendance. This is our second opportunity to share with the community who we are and what we do and what our ambitions are and what our plans are. The first time we did this, we kind of turned it into a party and we had about 70 people crammed up in here. This time I wanted to focus more on exactly what we were doing. And so we don't have Josephine performing this time afterwards. And she wouldn't have been able to perform anyway because the power's out. And being an entity that depends on power, this is kind of a wake-up call for us about being prepared for instances like this, where this might happen. So I will say that, where's Dre at? Dre in the back. And we do have a wonderful percussionist and wonderful bass player here that we're playing a cappella that normally were. So it's just, y'all are good. They just knew we could do anything. And, oh yeah, feel free to punctuate anything that you want to punctuate, you know, with emphasis on the percussions. So my name is Tony Benton, and I am the founder of RainierAvenueRadio.World. We are a multimedia broadcast organization. I simplify it by saying radio, but we're much more than radio. Radio is just something easy for people to grasp onto because we broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with continual programming. Our programming is created by members of our community. We have 50 programs, 50 different programs that members of our community have created. The goal in putting this together, after doing 20 years in major market radio and then getting out of radio and saying, what do I want to do? And then there was a realization that the community, you know, that I grew up in did not necessarily have an outlet to share its narrative, to share communication, and to a place where people could say, this is where I feel comfortable coming, this is where I feel comfortable expressing myself. And so that's what the whole purpose of this radio station was about. In addition to that, before we got started with the radio station, we created what's called the Creative Arts Digital Media Academy, and that is our learning programs. And in the Creative Arts Digital Media Academy, the reason that happened first, because if we're going to present a 21st century radio station and multimedia broadcast network, we thought that it was important to begin the process of training the community with 21st century job skills. And so we began with seniors and adults. We started out offering adult digital literacy classes. And that was for folks who felt that there were barriers or challenges for them to getting on the internet. And so we taught classes that started out with everything as simple as this is the keyboard. These are the functions on the keyboard. And by the time some of our seniors had finished our class, they were excited because they were uploading and downloading video and shooting video and sending it across back to their initial home countries. And then we began our youth program. and we started educating youth in a broad curriculum that included a number of interdisciplinaries. We taught everything from communications and journalism to app design, web design, photography, film, broadcast, of course, understanding social digital media and understanding the analytics behind social digital media. And each of the students in our classes would have a project where they would have to work with the business, so we combined working with various businesses with our students for the completion of their final projects. We've also taught classes, of course, in our own facility, but then we've taught classes in Rainier Community Center, in the Rainier Vista Boys and Girls Club, Mercer Middle School, Washington Middle School, Rainier Beach High School, and Franklin High School. So we're really excited about our educational component, and so far we've graduated over 300 people, and we're really excited about that. And people have, in addition to that, learned everything from Photoshop to editing software, whether that be audio or visual. So we have taught people Adobe Audition, which is an editing software for audio, and we've taught them Premiere, which is a software for editing video, and Movie Maker. And the whole point of this was to empower the community so that the people were prepared to be part of the radio station. And a number of the folks who took our classes became engaged and involved with the radio station. And that's the way it was supposed to work. So if you wonder how we ended up getting 50 people who happily, eagerly come to our radio station to volunteer, it's because they're vested in what we're doing here. They're vested in what we're trying to do for the community, and they understand the concept and the importance of communication. And that's why we exist, to be a benefit to the communities that we are situated in, and we specifically said this community right here. Now, we obviously, because we're an internet radio station, have reach anywhere. So we do have listeners not only in Seattle and South Seattle, where we place an emphasis, and the numbers show that we penetrate really well in this community. But outside of that, we also reach folks all around the state, all around the country, and have a listenership literally all around the world. We have listeners in Russia, in the Netherlands, in France, in South Africa, in Colombia, in Guatemala, in Canada, in Mexico, and I could go, the Philippines.
Australia, number one.
Australia, New Zealand. So we're really happy about the growth that we've had. Essentially, we broadcast in 4 buckets. One of them is talk radio. And so while I'm doing that, there's a couple of folks here that I've acknowledged, like Bert Coeli, who does one of our foreign language shows, which is kind of a mix of Tagalog and English. The show is called Phil M, and it's an incredibly popular show, and large listenership overseas. And is Rolling here? No, Rolling's
no, you're going to make it.
Okay. Now we have a fitness show. That is pretty incredible. Paul Pearson does a show called Star Time, plays 50s and 60s R&B. Dietrich Prince in the hat back there, who is filming, does a show called Just My Opinion. And Mr. Prince is also the lead instructor for our Creative Arts Digital Media Academy, and has taught, again, classes in all of the places where I have described to you. And he's our lead instructor. And Karen Zamit is our marketing specialist and administrator, and she also has a show on the air. And see, this is what happened. People started out, and then they realized, oh, I can do this. And then they become on-air personalities, and then they begin to share their message. And so her show is called Mojams, which is a show for musicians to come, and it's very organic. The music's not planned. They just put musicians on stage, and people start performing. So we broadcast a number of different things. But as I mentioned, news is important to us. News we do ourselves, because it's important that the community knows that when they tune into our radio station, you're going to get quality news. We don't tell you we're not a political affiliation. We just tell you the information and allow folks to make decisions on their own. And that's why we feel it's important for us to deliver news. Now, if you want your own show, you can deliver the news however you want it. And that's the freedom that we offer folks who participate in this. It's your opinion. So along with our talk that comes in foreign languages, we also have talk shows that cover critical issues. Mr. John Yansataki is not here, our esteemed community elder who covers a number of different important issues for us. Some of our shows are just silly and funny and you might say weird. But that's the whole point of having expression and giving people the opportunity to do what they want to do and be creative. And there's no, you get your time to do it. It's not a matter of if anybody listens or if a million people listen. This is an opportunity to express. We also have shows in music. Our music shows, again, are just as wide as our audience here in South Seattle. And so you'll hear music, you'll hear jazz music, you'll hear hip hop, you'll hear rock music, you'll hear Filipino music, you'll hear Fijian music. Again, you'll hear homegrown music, you'll hear local music. Our music is just all over the place. We have youth programming. Some of our programming is created for youth. So we have an example, a show called Story Time, where adults come in and read their favorite children's stories, and for children to listen to them. So that's a really great program they have. We also have a show called The Buzz. The Buzz is a show where youth come in. It's their territory. We don't tell them what to say or how to say it, and they express their viewpoints from their perspective. We may not always agree with it, but if we know something that at one point in time people didn't agree with us when we were younger. And so we give them the latitude and the room to talk about things that are important to them. So I found out some things. I found out what a hipster was. I thought I knew, but evidently it's a different thing to a 16-year-old than it is to a 57-year-old. And our youth have come on and also done some amazing programming. And we also have a sports department. Very excited about our sports department. We have 5 shows that are on the air that are produced by people from the community. Mr. Rick Dupree is our sports director. He does a show called One-on-One with Duke. We've had some fabulous interviews on his show. Paul Schneiderman does a show called Sports and Stuff, where he focuses on the legal issues regarding sports. He's an attorney, and so he was also a member of Save Our Sonics. Granville Emerson, who just got named head coach at Seattle Prep, also does a show on our radio station. Masvita Moreri, who's been a long-time sports fan, he does a show on our radio station, a sports show. Am I missing any of our sports? Edwin is Edwin Bailey of the Seattle Seahawks, is our Seahawk expert, and he does play-by-play for our football games. Randall Morris, former Seattle Seahawk, also does play-by-play for our football games. Juan Cotto at Fred Hutch does play-by-play for our baseball games. He and Will Sanchez do a show called NYC, and it's so cool that I can't remember everything that we do. And I don't want to forget anybody because everybody puts a lot of time into their shows. Ty over here does the only religious show that BK Presents is another religious show. And I was a little worried at first about, well, what if we do religion? What does that turn out? But people, again, deserve the freedom to express their point of view. And so you can like it and listen to it, and if it's not your thing, you can turn it off and turn us on later. So as you can see, our programming is all over the place, but it is I like to call it a mirror that reflects our community. And that's all essentially that we do, is we hold up this mirror, and what comes into it is what we put on the air. And so that is Rainier Avenue Radio, and that is why we're doing what we're doing. So how did we get to this point right here? Well, we needed a home. And as I was looking for a number of different locations where I wanted to be on Rainier. If you call Rainier Avenue Radio, it's important to be on Rainier. And so I was looking at and talking to a number of different entities about what we could do. And Mr. Jim Thornton said, what about the Esquire Club? I had not thought about the Esquire Club. And the thing about the Esquire Club that really intrigued me was the potential to be involved with a black organization in South Seattle. And I'm sure that you are aware of the issues that we're having with gentrification in our communities. And so this opportunity to partner with a black organization like the Esquire Club that has the core values that I wholeheartedly agree with. You know, when you talk about a relationship, and some of the values are integrity and trust, you know, and high achievement and giving back to the community. Those are things that you say, okay, I can align with this, and so that I said, let's move forward with this. Let's see what this looks like. And it's been a good experience because, you know, we had some options. The place that we're in right now is a company called PSW Real Estate. They own all this property. They own all this property. And they are really happy with us here and happy about what we're doing. And we're working with them because so that we can get other folks to get the same opportunities that we have. To find a building in your community, to make a partnership with an entity in your community. And so that's another thing that I'm doing with a number of different entities in the city, is working with private developers, working with business, working with city government, and working with arts organizations to help folks who need a physical place to be and in our communities. And then also ensure that the developers who move into our communities are aware of the historical value of the variety of cultures that we have in this community, so that we don't lose that. Because as you know, when folks move in and develop, affordable housing to them isn't necessarily what a lot of folks would call affordable housing. And then also, if you're a small business, in particular an arts organization, you know, that you can't always afford the rent. And so I found that by communicating and working with these different entities, they want to work with the community, they just don't always know how to, and there's not a blueprint for not how that should be done. And so we're in the process now of being part of creating that blueprint about how you work with businesses, how you work with government, and how you work with arts organizations, so that you create a relationship where a community that is facing gentrification has a vehicle to hold on to its infrastructure, it's who it is, its identity. So that's again how we kind of got to this point. The Department of Neighborhoods was really enthusiastic about us taking this step forward, and so I had a brief meeting with Mr. Bruce Harrell, and said, okay, well, this is great, let's go for it. And wrote a grant, and got it, and here we are. You know, there are a number of different entities along the way that support this effort, a number of different organizations that support this effort. You know, I just met this morning with Eric McCurry from the Metro League, who was so excited about the work that we had done with them, that we're getting an exclusive contract to broadcast all of the Metro League games. We have a contract with the WIAA to broadcast games statewide, which we have done. We broadcast games all over the state, and we're going to expand on that as well, as well as some other things that we have in the future that will be coming up. We've created partnerships with organizations like the Mariners, the Seattle Storm, auto dealerships, local businesses, Jeffrey Taylor, Ezell's. I could go on and on, because that's also critical to our identity, is being able to establish and build relationships with the businesses within our community. As we began to undertake this project, initially what we were going to do was design and construction. And so we realized that we had to take a good critical look at what we actually could do. And so at that point in my time, I just said, well, you know what? This benefits. This is the point of having a collaborative relationship. This will benefit everybody. So let's just find out exactly what we can do, what the parameters are, and because we want to have a nationally recognized media hub. We want to have a place that when CNN comes to Seattle, they come here.
Yeah.
We want to have a place where when something has to be done, and not only is the technology available, but we have the people within our community to be the ones who are operating the technology, to be the ones who are delivering the messaging, to be the ones who are responding to the issues and being the journalist who write straight journalism or write opinion and write perspective. And so these things are really important to us, and it's why we're here. We're not just here to be a radio station. What's up, Mr. Kaufman? And so our volunteers come from a variety of different backgrounds and again express the multiculturalism that's within our community. And so the combination of these things made it for a wonderful relationship to partner with the Esquire Club. And so the phase that we're in right now is called feasibility and accessibility. To get a better understanding of what we can do and how we can do it and what that's going to look like. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what the costs are. Because that's going to be important. And this is something that we're picking up, we're doing. We've had support for a number of different, I've gotten grants in the past. And so this opportunity to continue that effort to get grants, but move into capital improvement is something that I certainly wanted to take advantage of. And working with the Esquire Club, again, an entity that we can invest into knowing that we're giving back to our community. And also, as you can probably see, and you can't always tell by someone's look, I'm black. And I grew up very Afrocentric, and being a person who represents my community is very important to me. I used to do Black History Month events, some of the largest Black History Month events in the country. We used to do them down in Tacoma. We brought in people like Reverend Al Sharpton and Danny Glover, and there's my godmom right there, Don Mason, Congress State Representative. Former state representative, but another leader in our community. And these are the people who I had the opportunity to mentor me. And so as we get more spread out, that's why I think it is also critical to have a place where people know they can come get that type of mentorship, to find that kind of leadership, and the programming there also, so that they can learn in-house from a variety of different people. And I'm going to turn it over here to Owen in a minute, who's going to kind of tell you how we want to make our vision come true for what we want to build. I do want to definitely thank our architectural crew. We went through an extensive process. They told us that we only had to get 3 people. Said, if you guys get 3 people, you meet the requirement. We sent out RFQs, requests for, we sent out RFQs to 800 different architects. 800 different architects, because we wanted to make sure that people knew we were serious about what we were doing. And they said, oh, that's it. And when we got them back, I think we got some 30 responses back. And our account manager for Department of Neighborhood said, oh, that's awesome. We've never seen anything like this before. And she says, well, you only have to interview about 3. Well, of course, we didn't do that, because we wanted to make sure that we gave everybody, depending on how large your firm was or how small your firm was, an opportunity to sit in front of our steering committee and express why they thought that they could be the firm to do this. And who's from the steering committee? I know John Yasutaki's not here. Mel Fernandez, or Mel was over here. Mel is I don't want to say former, I guess once you're a structural engineer, you're a structural engineer, retired. And then also an architect. He's been part of our steering committee. John Yasutaki was part of our steering committee. Karen Zamit is part of our steering committee. And I can't say enough good things about Mr. Jim Tharp and his wide array of talents and intellect as being part of our steering committee as well. And then also Mark Redinger, who's a gentleman who designed McCall Hall and Ben Royal Hall, was one of our...
That's your card.
Oh, sure. Was one of our architects as well. Interesting thing about Mark is Mark saw our RFQ and he contacted me and he said, this is awesome. He said, but our firm is making money. How about instead of my firm applying for this, I volunteer my time so that I can assist you through this entire process. And so those are, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of support that we have as a community-centric entity, a radio station which is much broader than being a radio station. And so we're excited about the potential of what we're going to do. You know, through a combination of the granting process and funding, which, you know, we have, at this point, we're getting folks who are coming to us and saying, apply to us, please, because they like what we are doing, because of the educational component, the community component, the who we are serving and the how we are serving them, and the results that people have seen from what we've done. This isn't just theory. We have put into play what we have been talking about and what we've been trying to accomplish. And so with the combination of that, and then also a capital campaign that will be starting very shortly for fundraising, and then also private investment. So we feel really good about our potential to do the things that we want to do moving forward. And we feel real good about the partner that we chose to be engaged and involved with. And so what you're going to hear today is going to be a vision that we are going to share with you about what we would like to bring to this community. Of course, you know where we would like to do it, which is at the Royal Esquire Club, right in the center of Columbia City, and how we plan to go about accomplishing this. And so at this point, other than, again, just pointing out a few people who are here who are instrumental to what we do at this radio station, like Mr. James Gurdy. He's the guy who came in interning for us. Now he came in as an intern. As a matter of fact, I told him to leave, but he persevered. And now he's our engineer. He's a producer. He was over in Pasco. He did baseball broadcasting. Did some commentary on baseball broadcasting, and just watching his growth has been phenomenal. And there are a number of other stories like that I can share. Naila, sitting over here, has hosted several shows for us. From spoken word, and I'm kind of spilling the beans right now, but she's also going to join our educational team and instruct some of the students who will be teaching this summer. This summer we'll be offering a class here from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We'll be teaching kids, again, the curriculum that I told you about, and we'll be paying them $15 an hour to learn here. So, and that was specifically designed for kids who can't afford to not work over the summer, because we wanted to provide them an educational opportunity, and that was going to be, oh, do I choose between this or I have to work? So we found a way to make sure that we combine those two. So we're paying kids $15 an hour to be here to go to school, and we get to apply to them the same standards that they would have a job. If you're late, you may not get to come in that day, and you just missed a day of work. And so we get to apply some of those some of the principles of leadership and mentorship that are part of what we do. And anybody who's with this radio station can tell you the three core things that are important to us. And we figure if we run everything through these three principles, whatever we do will be okay. And our particular three principles are teamwork, mutual respect, and high achievement. And we demand all three. Teamwork, mutual respect, and high achievement. Now that doesn't mean my high achievement is your high achievement. It doesn't mean your high achievement is her high achievement. It's your high achievement. It's you doing the best that you do. And that's how we function everything through this radio station, whether it's our on-air programming or our classes or the relationships or the people who we look to engage with. These are principles that we think are core and essential to who we want to be as a representation of our community. Having said that, thank you all for coming, and let's get into some of the nuts and bolts, and I'm excited to show you where this process has led to us being right now. And so I don't even know are you the president and founder of ORA Architects?
Yeah, I am.
President and founder? Okay, president and founder. And usually that's what's happened, because if you found the company, you generally make yourself president. Or CEO or something along those lines. And so I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks. Wow, that's a hard act to follow.
And it was we ended up with 7 architects. And I don't think we could have been wrong with any of them, but I know we were right with this one. Yeah.
Well, it's an honor and a great pleasure to be here, and this is really an incredibly important project and a really exciting opportunity for us and for the community. So I wanted to introduce a couple of folks that are also here with my group. Jeremy Goody here, who actually did most of the drawings you're going to look at, and Leslie Bain with Framework, who's an architect that we also collaborate with a lot. And we were, as Tony said, we started this project, the process, going through a selection process about 3 months ago, I think now, and about 2 months ago we started the assessment that we're just now completing, this first phase of a feasibility study to evaluate the space at the Royal Esquire Club to help the radio station define their program, which is their space needs, and to assess what it will take to make that vision come together in the space there at the Royal Esquire Club. And so what we have here are some materials that we had as part of the first phase. Some of you who may have come to the first community meeting will recognize some of these boards, but I'll just quickly kind of recap that. And then I'll focus in on what we've been doing since that last meeting, which was on April 28th and 26th. So this is a site plan of the Columbia City area. We're right here now. This orange dot is where the radio station is currently, and this triangle is where the Royal Esquire Club is currently, and it has been for 32 plus years. Is that right? 33. And that's really the heart of Columbia City, and I think it's really exciting to think about bringing together the long-time energy of the Esquire Club with the energy the fresh energy that the radio station is pulling together, and what can we do to kind of build on that and really revitalize this core of Columbia City. So that's kind of the overall site plan. We started off by looking at a couple of different options for the site. The one that I think had been identified first, which is the second floor space above the Royal Esquire Club. The Royal Room is to the north, and the Esquire Club, of course, it extends all the way under here. This is a space that is there's a double height, an existing mezzanine space on the second floor, which is a storage space. It has relatively low ceiling heights, but it's available, and it's kind of has some really interesting opportunities. This diagram showed 2 possible arrangements in terms of how to connect to the community. This one looks out, kind of suggests that you open out towards Rainier Avenue. The other looked at the possibility of connecting through to Hudson Street. And I think in the initial studies, everybody kind of focused in on it being really important, as Tony said earlier, that making that connection on Rainier Avenue is really important on a couple levels. We did look at this one because there's some potential cost benefits to doing it off of the side street, so we wanted to kind of test that, and it's something that we can still hold and continue to talk about as a possibility. We'll get into the details of that later. So those were the first 2 options we considered. And then when we had our initial site walk with our whole consultant team and the key folks from the Rainier Avenue Radio Group, and Jim Tharp was there as well, we also, in looking around the site, we identified this space on the rear side, facing onto 39th, that isn't currently a storage space and a long-time garage, I think. And we said, okay, let's look at this space too, because it's available. It's not heavily used right now, And so we tested that one as well. The challenge with this one, a couple challenges with this. One is that it's considerably smaller than that second story space. It's about 1,100 square feet, whereas the second floor space is about 2,100 square feet usable space. So this space would really only be feasible to meet Rainier Avenue Radio's needs if we built an addition onto that. But so we looked at that. We developed a plan here that shows that possibility that you could have in the existing space, you could have the flex space, the broadcast room, which is the equivalent of this space. I'm sorry, the broadcast room, which is the primary presentation room. And then the larger community space and conference room and office would be an addition. So that was what we looked at on this option. You can see by these interior photos that it is a big, tall, raw space that has some benefits, but it also would require quite a lot of work, and so it would be more costly than the second level space, particularly because of the fact that we have to do the addition. So after we went through that first round of evaluating those initial options, everyone kind of within I think the majority of the folks in the first community meeting, as well as follow-up discussions within the core stakeholder groups, kind of focused in on really the first space this first option we looked at with converting that second floor space and making the connection on Rainier Avenue was really the primary option, the one that we'd really like to do. So we focused in on that in our more detailed study. So we've gone through with our structural engineer and mechanical electrical engineers, looked at what it would take to convert that space, and then we did a more detailed study, which I'll show you here. So again, this is looking at this space in a little bit more detail. Again, the same site plan. This is an aerial view of the space from the back, kind of diagramming what would happen there. And then this is a plan of what that second floor space would look like. So Rainier Avenue is along here, and the idea is that on the first floor, which I'll come back to, you would have a new storefront entry and stair and a wheelchair lift up that would lead you up to the second floor, so you'd have great visibility there. And you come up to the second floor space, and you'd have an arrival point. Then you'd have the equivalent of this space, the live broadcast space here, conference room, a flex space, office, kitchen, and the broadcast room. So in many ways, it's very similar to what they have in this space, but it would be kind of bringing all this space and energy to the second level of the Esquire Club. And on the first level, in order to make that connection, we would need to do some work to those, rework those restrooms on the ground floor that are currently serving the bar space, and create a better entry to that space, as well as redoing those restrooms. But we felt like that was really an important step to make this connection through on the second level. Or to the second level. So what that would mean in terms of the so this is a view of that transformed storefront space. The primary entrance with the awning to the Royal Esquire Club is here. So this is currently those bays that are painted out as background. The Royal Room entrance is over here. So we would open up this space, create a kind of an active storefront space there, new signage and graphics that would kind of speak to the radio station's presence, and as you can see, really an opportunity to bring the same kind of energy that RainierAvenueRadio.World brings to the street here, to really help energize this kind of stretch of the building that currently is between your primary entrance and the Royal Room, and we think in a way that would kind of obviously bring a lot of energy and benefit for the Rainier Avenue Radio, but it would also and now allow, I think, an enhanced entrance to your to the space for the Royal Esquire Club as well. And then this is a section cut through through that second level space. So if you can imagine, currently that roof line comes through here. They are built as a series of separate buildings, so this is in effect a separate space in here. So it would be relatively structurally straightforward to basically demolish the existing roof, raise that roof about 5 feet, so that you'd create a generous space that would be maybe a little bit higher than this, with some clerestory lights along the windows along the north side, so you'd have some really nice light into that space. But again, it's a way to kind of transform that second level space that is currently a storage space and somewhat underused. We think it would obviously be a great space for the radio station. It's very similar scale to this space. It's slightly narrower and slightly longer than this space, but otherwise it could be very similar to the kind of what we feel is like an ideal kind of arrangement that we have here.
We do like this space. It's just not...
it's not available for long term. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's an interesting aspect of this, is to think about, some years ago I was on a panel but the name of the panel was New Ideas Need Old Buildings. And I think that this is a perfect case in point for that, where there's an opportunity to create something that transforms a building that is in some, it's obviously got an important active use currently, but here's a space that's unused, that can kind of bring some new energy to this building and to this part of town. I will say that this is less expensive than if you were to go build a new building, but there are challenges with renovating this space. One of them is because it's over an existing occupied space, there will be, and we need to make some structural improvements to the floor as well as to the roof. There would be some challenges in terms of the sequencing, kind of and costs related to the fact that you'd have to do some work to that existing ceiling in order to access the space from underneath. You would, and then of course you'd have to put that back in, and of course there would be the question of how quickly can that be done and minimize the impact to the operations of the club itself. There are also, when you are, obviously anytime you're demolishing and then building something new, it's that portion of the work is more expensive elsewhere. Obviously, because it's primarily an interior space, it doesn't have as many costs as a new construction would in that respect. But it does have, you would be building a new roof, new windows, and sort of all of that. And then going back to what we were talking about on the ground level space, there's the cost of reworking those restrooms, which obviously I think would be a benefit to the Esquire Club, but it would also add cost to the project. So that's part of the challenge when we kind of start looking at the overall costs of all this. In terms of the cost for the build out of the space itself, we've plugged in our the estimating, which is we're still kind of working through the final cost estimates for all this, but this is not high-end fancy finishes or anything like that. I mean, it's similar, obviously what they're doing brings its own energy, and you don't need that kind of fancy elaborate spaces, but you do need spaces that are appropriate scale and bring some natural light and are configured to really address acoustical concerns. And the acoustical treatment is another thing that will be important and has some cost issues that need to be plugged into the cost of the project as well, because we're we're going into a space that is adjacent to spaces that have other activities going on, so we need to introduce additional acoustic separations between them. So that is an overview of this, what we've done in this study. We're just pulling together kind of the final aspects of pulling together all the cost estimates and the details, and then we'll be kind of wrapping up this initial phase of the feasibility study, and that's kind of the first, or the final step of this phase of this Department of Neighborhood grant that Tony was speaking to. I will say that we did look, again, in a little bit more detail at this option of connecting across to Hudson Street instead of on this side, and it would be less costly because you wouldn't need to do this rework on the lower level. There would be some additional costs because you'd be creating a new connector along the edge of the parking lot on the west edge of that parking lot between the Royal Room and the Royal Esquire Club parking lot. But
Kind of like a sky bridge or something, wouldn't it?
well, I wouldn't quite call it a sky bridge, but it would be an elevated walkway. There would be a wood deck structure probably, and one potential benefit if you did make a connection from that side is that because the street is sloping up along that side, you could configure it so you'd come in at the second floor level, and you'd be able to avoid needing to have a wheelchair lift over in this other location, which would kind of save costs in that respect as well. That said, I mean, I think there's this vision of Jeremy's, I guess the contract called Jeremy's vision here, as he's the one who did this great rendering, but the vision of bringing that activity right out to Rainier Avenue is really worth something, I think. And so I think that's part of what we'd like to have a discussion with the community, is kind of get your feedback about, how important is that? Is it worth kind of thinking about that?
Just a little question, is there a way to do visually and artistically something on but how the entry may be? So you still have a presence, but it's not an entry.
Yeah, that's a good question. You could definitely introduce some graphics. I don't think that would quite achieve the same thing. Yes?
What if you put windows so that walking by you can see the activity inside? And
Yeah.
so you just put a window in there, and people are on, it's kind of showtime all the time.
Yeah.
Like on the Today Show, you can see
Right.
in there. The other thing is in doing your budget, because these things take time, because the city takes a long time for permitting it. I hope that you're putting in
Escalation.
escalation. I govern, the organization has a building, we're doing some things right now, again, trying to maintain the community. But time goes by, and so what you thought it was going to cost, every year it goes up about almost 20%. It's horrible.
You're a wise woman. Yes. Yeah, that's a really interesting challenge and question, because you need to plug in something to allow for that escalation of construction costs, which in theory they've been saying it's 5 year, but it has in some cases been more than that. The problem is that if you say, well, we're not going to do this for 5 years and let's just plug in 20% a year, you're going to kill almost any project. So in some respects you have to speak about it in current dollars and know that that's something that you project out and do an estimate of what you think is a reasonable time frame and plug that into the equation too. Yeah. Back to your question about the second floor, the windows. That would be a potential possibility to introduce windows here. This is in the landmark district of Columbia City. So introducing new windows in the existing space would be a very hard sell.
Okay.
But I think it might, as a fallback, the floor level of this second floor is coming in very close to there, so you might get some connection through there, but it wouldn't be, it would be a tough one, yeah. But I think that is, yeah, so that's, and I think back to the basic question is, at this point, what do you want to do? I mean, it seems like we should be putting out the vision of what we really want to do. We can always have that other option that we carry even into a future phase to evaluate further in terms of, the fallback could be to do it on the backside.
A lot of buildings, they have sort of a mezzanine that you can, you have an entrance in the door and you can walk in there and you can look on the board to see the Rainier radio station is on the second floor. And
Sure.
So and then Esquire, the lounge is straight ahead or downstairs or something. Did you? I didn't know if that was in your plans or whether it was just for the Rainier Avenue radio to go through there, or whether you allowed for the current access to the lounge to exist.
Well, I think our expectation, my understanding, talking to Jim Tharp about that, was that it was important to maintain a connection through to the lounge. Come into one lobby and go one way or the other. So what we've shown is the idea that there's a storefront along there, and they're kind of under the same overall awning, but they would be operationally separate entrances, which I think if you didn't do that, you'd be creating kind of an awkward operational condition with that kind of interior lobby space. But the intention of creating a space that has that connectivity between the groups would be. Yes, sir.
Yeah, with the Royal Esquire Club. Structurally speaking, let's back that up. I'm more worried, retired architect also.
Okay.
More worried from the context of what triggers this construction is going to do that's going to trickle down to other things that we're going to have to upgrade. It's not just what you're going to do, but I've got electrical and I've got my plumbing, which could turn out and be something. Sprinkler systems, I have no idea. We haven't talked about occupancy. You're going to put the classes up there. At one point in time, do I have to sprinkle the building? Earthquake. I mean, I've got all these things that are dealing with money that we're not talking about when we're talking about program. And I know you're still working the feasibility on that.
Well, I didn't touch on that, but we have had meetings. There are two groups that the Department of Neighborhoods really wanted to make sure we connected with and got feedback from during the feasibility study. And one was the landmarks group that I mentioned, and we reviewed all of these options with them, and they were open to all of them. They did emphasize that the storefront along the historic storefront was important to maintain, but this option of opening up the space was one that they were very supportive of, and in many respects gets back to the original, what would have been original to the building before. So anyway, I just wanted to cover that. But on your other question about what would this project trigger in terms of other requirements, the technical requirement or term, as you know, is substantial alteration.
30% killer.
Right. And we have had a couple of meetings with the Seattle Department of Construction Inspections, formerly DPD, and they confirmed that they would not view this project as triggering substantial alteration for the building because of this relative scale of the project within the context of the building as a whole. The other aspect is that this building is currently, it was permitted as an A occupancy, assembly occupancy, and the Rainier Avenue radio activities would not, it would actually be basically an occupancy that wouldn't be more hazardous than the A occupancy. So from that point of view, they would not, it would not trigger new, it would not trigger kind of building-wide substantial operation issues. Likewise, structurally, we would obviously need to seismically enhance what we're doing, and there are costs related to that, but it would not trigger a requirement for more building-wide seismic upgrades. And I don't actually know the details of this when the Royal Room was renovated. But it would be good to know if that triggered any issues, or if there were things that were upgraded with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think in general, but all of these things, as you rightly point out, are potential risks and ones that will need to be evaluated and kind of continually monitored as the project moves forward. But yeah.
The structure, the structure being able to raise the roof, and you say that you found that pretty much post-beam construction or something like that, the loads are coming straight up. I'm wondering about the subfloor underneath the building here.
This is a slab on grade below the bar space. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, I've got a sinking spot where my bar is now, so some things are on that floor.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So when I'm bringing my loads down from
right.
the subfloor.
Right. Yeah. Again, that will be something that would need to get evaluated further. And there are issues with, as some of you may know, there was a fire at some point in the distant future or distant past. And so, the roof was partially, or if not completely, replaced at some point. There are some charred members in there, so that's
6
coming
inches
out.
deep, man. So they're pretty much broken.
So, yeah, we're not going to raise the roof and just move it up. We're going to take it out.
So, I think the question that one should be asking is, what do they want the radio station to actually be? Because with each of these two designs, each one of these designs, sorry, what? Oh, sorry. Really? You couldn't hear me. That's the first time I've ever heard that. Yeah, wow. Okay, that's you got that on video. Okay, good. So with each of these designs would be functionally acceptable for a different type of radio station. And the question we should ask is what kind of radio station we want, because that one right there is a radio station, something that is, I guess, monomedia. If I were to classify it, if I were to try to put a name to it, something where you only have news, events, sports being broadcasted over radio, right? It's in the back of the building. It's not a storefront. People aren't seeing it. People aren't interacting with it unless they're listening to it over radio, which is fine. That one, on the other hand, I look at that and I think of what I saw last time I was in New York City. Actually, what I see when I drive down First Avenue. Everyone knows the Cairo building I'm talking about on First Avenue. You drive down there, right? You drive past it, you see a Twitter feed, you see a screen with different updates, literally reporters in the field. And when I was recording here, I owe you a drink, by the way. Yes, I do. I owe you an apology drink. When I was driving past here about 3 weeks ago, there was a huge police presence up there. I don't know if you all remember. There was some kerfuffle at, anyone remember the apartment building in Rainier Beach?
There's always something.
Well, I'm talking about big. I'm talking about no, very big. Bigger than usual. I'm talking about, I could swear to God there was an invasion happening. And
We had a murder right here on the corner.
so I'm talking about multiple ones. And here's the thing. So I came up here to record my show and I was like, guys, what's happening down there? And oh, it's something. So I went back later and I asked, I asked around and I found out what was happening. And for my show, it's pre-recorded. It goes out the next week. It's not current news. But if we have a storefront like that,
maybe we have someone that does news by the minute, or maybe one of us moonlights in the person does traffic. That we have a Twitter for traffic jam, right? Then we're making the news, and we're competing with other, we're competing with KVRU, the Emerald. We have on the minute news, and we can bring it to the people with option 1. Option 2, not so much, albeit it has a different function. So it depends on what we really want to do with it.
I like that idea because the power's out because there's a big to-do down.
Right.
Three blocks down, there's an accident, somebody got hit. No one
Right.
up here even knows, we're 2 blocks away, but if the radio's running this feed and got the, police scanner going, and even a reader board, running it across, that would be fun because then everyone would know what's going on. While my mouth is going up and down like this, I'd like to say that I just sent Tony the email about the State Department of Commerce building grant. It's due by August 9th. So I just sent that to you. Also, the legislature has a capital budget they have to pass, and that's about building projects. And it's sponsored by the delegation that's in a district. So this is 37th district. So it's a conversation with Senator, with Rebecca, Eric, and Sharon. And one of them will sponsor that for some kind of building, something, and then it's, gets into because we have a operating budget for the state, we have a capital budget. Those are 2 different budgets. And they usually know what they're going to do by the summer. It's not way in January when they start. So I told Anthony that. I had told the folks over at 23rd and Cherry Fellowship Hall, which is not on 23rd, it's on 27th, because they moved right here and not. And he had a conversation with Eric, and they got their money in the budget. So, because they're building out, it's called Raising Cherry. So there's a lot of activity. I want everyone to know.
That was $300,000.
They got $300,000, and so there's a lot of things going on. And how do we maintain Black ownership of our capital assets? So I'm over at First Place, and we just saved First Place, and we're doing some building out there and seeing our building as a revenue source, blah, blah, blah. And I know that we're trying to maintain the Central Area Senior Center. Esquire is in that of maintaining and keeping it. The Campfire House, which is now Bird Bar Place, is one. We're going for a meeting to get the 23rd, and yes, the fire station for an innovation hub for kids over in the Central District. So mitigating the negative impacts of gentrification means that a lot of things on 2 sides in my head. We save what we have and take advantage of the gentrification. Good people have moved into our area. So gentrification isn't all bad. And help them know how to get involved, and also maintaining the cultural feeling of this area. Central District has lost that. So Africa Town is being developed to try to make it a sense of place. So all of these things are connected. So if everyone's doing their piece of the quilt, is really important. As a former legislator, I'm trying to thread them together. I try to be a lot of different places, make sure people know things or talking to each other. But my son came back from Brooklyn after being there for 15 years, and he says Brooklyn was gentrified, but it's still Brooklyn. He says when you come into Brooklyn, you have to become a Brooklynite. We allow people to move in here and not become Seattleites, and that is ruining the heart and soul of Seattle. But this is this stretch, what I call the outer limits of Seattle, down here in Rainier. We can do that. We can save this because we are the heart and soul of Seattle. Because if it becomes like what's happened from, Jackson North, there's no soul in this city. So people that move here must become Rainier Avenue kind of people. We have a radio station and help them learn how to do that. he loves me.
Does anyone else have some thoughts on the study?
When is your scheduled phase 2?
We have some things that we need to
clarify. So it's not scheduled after yet.
Well, we have some things that we need to.
That's it.
Yeah. No, we're ready. We would like to start moving forward with the design and construction phase. We need to make a decision about doing that within 2 to 3 weeks.
So the phase 2 is design and construction.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah. So that's what we plan on wrapping this up, so that within less than a couple weeks, this will be wrapped up, so that we can begin the process of immediately moving forward with whatever we're going to do with design and construction.
I would love to hear if anyone else has strong feelings about the A and B. Because I love hearing, people's perspective on. Isn't that what kind of it's about, right now, is to really get that feedback and.
Okay, just to go back to those, so we had, they're technically kind of three. There's a one, an option 1 and an option 2 was the one on the back, and then there's an A and B within that option 1.
You talked about differences, and you talked about some difference in cost, but you haven't quantified it. What is the difference in cost? Because everybody wants a Ferrari until the checks due.
Yep.
Right? So is it significant, like a huge difference between option 1 and 2? I also love that notion you're talking about vision. What is the vision of this place? From a vision standpoint, everything that I've heard so far is you want that storefront on Rainier.
Yeah. We don't quite want to put the costs out there, because as soon as you mention some numbers, we're still kind of.
Well, I don't mind if we put the basic fundamental figures of what we're looking at.
Okay.
That's what we're going to be shooting for, and it's going to be a moving target. But we're not talking about a line item thing. But if you want to talk about the overall projection of what we think it's going to cost, and we're happy with these figures.
And they are.
Well, so what we're looking at, and I think it's important to go back to your point about escalation, because we're talking today's dollars. So the construction cost for the preferred option is about close to $600,000. And then when you add and that's including sales tax and all of that. And then you add on the soft costs, the design and permitting and other management costs, it's about a little bit over $700,000 for the preferred option. Now the option that looks at the connection across Hudson Street could be total cost about $100,000 less, because you wouldn't have to make those changes on the ground level space and avoid the wheelchair lift. The space, the option on the back side, we did not get into quantifying in as much detail, but that's going to be at least $100,000, maybe $200,000 more than the one, than the second level space, and that's because the existing space is smaller, and there's very little there that has a lot of value. So it's a combination of having to build a larger, newer addition and the renovation of the existing space.
So I'd say 800,000. Because if you're doing a capital campaign, you don't want to hear all the breakdown how much.
Right.
So it sounds like it's about $850,000 property. That's not a lot of money. So, yeah, it's the cost of a house. And so, don't stutter when you say those numbers.
That's why I said I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's 850,900. You're keeping it under $1 million. You aren't saying $1 million. So it's 999. That's the gas, you know? So don't say $1 million. So it's in the $900,000 range. So I'd say, and with this thing, say 900,000. I have to tell you, our organization did a $40 million housing project. We're in Seattle, we only talk in millions and billions. We do not talk even in hundreds of thousands. You know, we have big assets. This asset itself, of Esquire Club, is in the millions of dollars. We're exactly afraid. So even if said it's $1 million project, it's nothing. That's all? I mean, we're in Seattle. Everyone gets their mind around that in Seattle we talk in millions. So don't be afraid to say $1 million. Don't be afraid to say 900,000 if you want to keep it under. But I would not shock people by saying it's 750 or 800. We know it's going to be more than that. Whatever you think it is today, it's going to be more than that. So go for the more than that. So when we did the $40 million project, we gave back to the state $500,000 because we were within, under budget and within time and all that stuff. And we looked really good. We built houses. So, you know.
So I think one of the things.
And the state has money. Go get it. And they want to put it in communities of color because we've underutilized it.
One of the things, Donna, and so you've got the figures. Again, going into this, and the point of doing the feasibility is I knew that there were going to be challenges. And so coming into it, we knew that there were going to be challenges. And so I'm okay with addressing some of the challenges that we're going to be faced, because I think there's going to be an overall benefit, to the entire process of accomplishing these things. Those things are there, and no matter what's going to be done, those things are going to have to be addressed. And so that's why I'm saying this is cool, and then there's an added value benefit that benefits the community, that benefits the club, benefits Rainier Avenue Radio, and but we have certainly taken a good hard look at those challenges, because that's what we're going to have to face. The vision is the vision, but then that vision meets the road. And so I appreciate what our architectural group has done in really drilling down on, during this feasibility part of it, some of the things that that we're going to have to face, that are some challenges that go along with what we're doing.
By the way, how long would each of these options take? I think that's also something to consider in terms of time, like conceivably. So if we said, okay, let's do this and start raising money and start putting all this in motion, how long would the process take? Go from ideas to reality with each of these options.
Well, I would say if you had all the money in place, it'd probably be 2 years to design, permitting, and construction. So add however much time you need for the fundraising on the front end of that. It might tell you how long the process would take.
So 3 years.
The construction phase. Looking at it from an operational Esquire Club perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, raising the money, that doesn't bother me. But once you say we're ready to go, what's our downtime?
Also mitigation funds.
What's that?
Mitigation. So if you're talking about the Esquire Club, presume this will be built on their edifice. So therefore, you're talking about, okay, well, you probably don't want to have a drinking party in the middle of a construction site. I'm just guessing. I don't know. Maybe turn up in construction site. I don't know. But those mitigation funds will be important in order to make sure it's.
We're still there when it's over.
Exactly.
So I think that would be something we need to kind of get into in more detail as we develop it further. But it'd be less than a year of construction. I mean, it's kind of probably 8 months.
By the way, either way though, option A is the better option. Because what Dawn said, but also factoring those things in, if those things are relatively fluid and things, it sounds like, Tony, you considered a lot of these things over time. then option A is probably the best way to go. Especially if we want to actually have the radio stations, Don put it, be something that represents Rainier Avenue, right?
Well, right now, I want to hear what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
I already know what I
Okay, we have something that's a little
I got a
offline
question.
over here. 1 minute. Since y'all are gonna have construction people out there, we thought that maybe you could fix the women's bathroom in that way. Since they're gonna be out there anyway. Anyway, that's just something that men may not understand, and then the better looking women's bathroom.
The men understand.
Oh, you don't understand? Okay. So since you're out there anyway.
Actually, I think it's,
Oh, okay.
as part of this project, we're going to make gender neutral bathroom.
Well, the gender neutral bathroom look better.
I got a question.
That's right. In the old club, actually.
Well, it's 20th century. I mean, that's fine. As long as I want to go to. Yeah.
I got a question. After all has been said and done, everything done, who owns it?
It is owned, continues to be owned by the Esquire Club.
Huh. Interesting.
So do you pay rent?
Again, we have some things that we need to talk about.
Okay.
And so right now, that's why I'm focusing on the vision of what we're doing, the costs associated with it, and the potential of the value of the relationship between Rainier Avenue Radio and the Esquire Club and the location.
I don't know, I guess this is my first visit, and y'all probably know more about all of this than I do. But having lived here a while, what excites me about it, besides I love, the things you're doing with young people, the things you're doing with different kinds of information, sports, music, talk, whatever, video, it all sounds wonderful.
What really gets me is having some diversity, and I don't mean of people or their color, but diversity of the kind of business on the street. When I moved here, Starbucks was a woman's I wouldn't say dress, clothing shop.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to buy anything. Then Rex's was across the street. There's a hardware store, True Value. I mean, you could do a variety of things. And now it's like you can eat, and there's a few things you can shop, but that's all you can do in the neighborhood. So this feels really good to me as a place in the neighborhood. I'm really excited by all you've done.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea with the whole concept of working with the Esquire Club, because that's like, there's strength in numbers, and then like Esquire, the Esquire Club has been, going strong for many years. It's been, representing the black community for many years, and not just the black community, but people have been high standard they always had, and to join with them, that's really a positive. That's going to be really positive. That's the way it's supposed to be.
I think it makes it a really strong statement.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it really, when I say it makes a strong statement for the black community, I mean the black community as part of being a larger community.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And accessible, as you can see by the diversity within our group. Again, we're simply just a reflection. I'm black, and so that I take that wherever I go. But I tell you, we're not a black radio station, but I'm black. But my experiences in South Seattle are one of I grew up around people who were Filipino, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Greek, Jewish, without losing my identity. And I think that as a people, we have always had something very constructive that we brought to society. And so unashamedly, we're black. But with that, having said that, we serve many different communities. And I think that the power of, again, this combination and then with the Esquire Club, I think that, as I was mentioning before, reinforces this concept of mentorship and provides, a pathway for people to see the value of what we as a people bring to the community, and then also, again, in that mentorship role for our youth coming up to have, like I had people to look up to, because there was a community.
Yeah, so, hi, my name is Budi. I actually work with David Harris from the City of Seattle Office of Economic Development, trying to bring in emerging technology to the community. With targeting the Rainier Beach mainly though. I think this is part of still Rainier Valley?
They made us part of their community. We have a Rainier Beach merchant sign in the window that they wanted to put up in there. So
it's called a Future Founders Fellowship. What you mentioning about mentorship and is bringing in like virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, blockchain, all that. This is my company.
And those are all things, those concepts you're talking about,
Yeah.
that we make sure that our young people become familiar with,
Exactly.
so it becomes part of
Yeah,
what they do.
exactly.
Those 21st century necessary skills. So when you're talking about VR and augmented reality,
Right.
it becomes like tying your shoes. Like,
But then also bringing in the cultural heritage from the community into the technology itself, having a say into the emerging technology in the early stage of the technology also. So rather than waiting till like this become mainstream, we're actually shaping the future that way. So it's the one that you said, like having intern like $15 per hour. We also went through that same process probably, EduCurious.
yes, we're working with EduCurious.
Yeah, so we will have for...
We're working with you guys.
No, we're not from EduCurious. We are
Through EduCurious.
Yeah, through
They're
EduCurious.
sponsored, they're funded by Office of Economic
Exactly.
Development.
So we also applied for another grant so that we have operating expenses that pay for. But we are trying to bring in more video production education too. Around Food Innovation District. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Rainier Beach Action Coalition.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're trying to actually, I try to connect with people who are around the culinary arts program, maybe a chef, restaurant owners, or farmers, like farm stands, something like that. So we're trying to but we're trying to do 360 cameras. We try to put the SimCity in VR somehow, stuff like that. Like how can you inform the community the best way of is through the technology, like just unifying it. Yeah. So hopefully I get a chance to sit down and talk about like the use case of some of this interiors.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, and then also hoping that.
What's the cat's name? Who's the executive director?
Diana Paraban is there?
Oh, I thought it was a guy.
My name is Budi.
Oh, you're Booty.
I'm Budi.
Oh, you've been trying to reach me.
Yes. So yeah, I would like to talk to you about education also, because we are trying to have the program at the African American Museum. They have a underutilized cafe area. So hoping that could be a good place for us to start with. Like maybe this place and maybe the other.
Just a quick plug for us. We also, for the last 2 summers, have offered a math and coding class at the African American Museum.
Wow.
Over the summer, 6-week math and coding class. And because of our bandwidth and are going to be offering our classes from here from 10 to 4, we're going to partner with an entity this year. So we're still going to offering math and coding classes. But we had to offer them off campus somewhere else because we needed another facility to do that. And so that's, again, one of the things about having something like this is it'll give us more space so that we can bring more of the stuff into our own facility.
Yeah. So my vision is to have, like, you heard about Silicon Valley. We're trying to have like XR Valley in the Silicon Valley area. So bringing in technology.
So I'd like to add that as far as the ethnic identity and the ownership, African American, it's the same as like I was on the board of the Asian Council of Research. That did not make it any less Asian because an African American was on that. The Filipino Community Center is owned by the Filipino community, but a lot of different entities utilize that space. So being that an African American ownership does not eliminate anybody else feeling part of that, being and helping. So, but it means that it's self-directed with solutions that come from internally, and it has a cultural specificity, and it makes sense in a diversity. I think in African Americans kind of got stumped in all of this, and now the community wants to raise it up. So there's a lot of ethnic identity around a lot of nonprofits and a lot of development in in this part of Seattle. And so it's not unusual. We have the Chinese Service Center, we have the Filipino Community Center, we have the Esquire Club, which is African American. Birthplace is African American.
Yeah, I was teaching robotics at the East African community, also in combination with the Filipino community.
Right.
Yeah,
They have the Ethiopian Community Center for other people go in there.
And then
utilize the space.
I'm planning on shooting video of their farm stand, opening up June 2nd.
Rick, I had some back on these different layouts and plans. On option 2, you were talking about how the square footage is a little smaller and it's not a storefront. It wouldn't be a preferred choice. And if you did that, you'd have to add on a little extra square there.
Right.
Did you ever consider taking your option 1 and carrying it all the way out to the street?
I think if we had more money, that would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, but I mean, that
little,
I don't know what that square footage is.
Yeah.
You know, elevated, not from ground floor.
Right, that could be a 2-story addition there.
Or just an upper area.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be something to consider, just
Well,
to
she
carry
said-
that on out to the street, you know, as opposed to some bridge coming from Hudson.
Across here,
Yeah,
that's a good
That
point.
seems more feasible to come straight all the way back to the street.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, that could be another alternative.
Well,
I think the other aspect of this is that